Hi, Angeley. Thanks for joining us today.
Nice to be here, Esther.
I really appreciate your time to come and, yeah, just have an opportunity to hear about you. You've got a really interesting background, and it'll be really inspiring to hear just a little bit about your journey. You've gone through some really good times and now into kind of leadership, and I think it'll be really inspirational to hear about you. So it'll be good to just start with just a brief introduction about yourself and your background.
Sure. So I'm in Berlin. I'm Angeley for all the listeners out there. I'm originally from California. That's why you hear this California accent, but I'm in Berlin. I've been doing marketing, sales, go to market, international expansion for the past 20 plus years in so many different countries. So a really, really cool experience across, gosh, US, UK, Australia, Europe, in and out of Singapore a few times. And I've seen really everything from scaling and scale ups and startups and huge companies, multinational IPO companies, and have done many different industries. And at this stage in my career, I just have a love for giving back, for
Mm.
mentoring others, and doing good work with good people. So nice to be here.
Yeah, definitely. Very well traveled. But I'm sure that comes with a lot of great stories. It'll be really interesting to hear like where you kind of started and how you actually got into a leadership position as a whole. Especially, I know you've gone a bit more of a sales into tech as well. It'll be great to hear about that transition.
Sure. So even though I'm in tech now, I actually started out as a salesperson in finance. So after
Okay.
university, and I call it the original outbound because back in the States, you actually had to drive to the client's offices and you would have these office parks and the directory, and you had to physically knock on everybody's door. So
Oh,
the
wow.
original outbound. So you can tell that to the SDRs that are complaining about doing HubSpot sequences, and you would get kicked out of people's offices. And
Mm.
it was either commission only or it was super high percentage commission. So that was back in those days. And then ended up working, my way up into leadership positions and management roles, and then transitioned into tech.
Mm.
So went through, GFC with the finance industry, super, super interesting, to watch all of that, and then landed into tech. And my first tech role was at Amazon. And then, the rest is history. So it's been quite an interesting ride.
Yeah, no, that definitely sounds it. It's always interesting to see that where you've started, and then where you are now. Um, how are you enjoying the tech industry? Like, what is it that you actually love about it? Like, is there anything that makes stands out?
I really like how it's fast moving. So
Mm,
I like the speed, I like the pace. I like how, 5 years ago, everybody was really talking about product marketing and inbound versus outbound. Now we're talking about AI taking over
yeah.
a bunch of different roles. The speed to which everything happens, which is really cool. Also, the flexibility, the nimbleness, I really
Hmm.
like that. But then on the flip side, I feel like sometimes the whole, from Silicon Valley, move fast and break things, I think that can have a different, connotation on the way that people work. And
Mm,
I'd like to see some more stability, in the working arena
yeah.
in tech, because you see companies come and go, you see teams come and go, you see, strategies come and go. And so I think that's the flip side of having the speed and the nimbleness is you'd like to see a little bit more, strategy put into place.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's forever changing, isn't it? There's always a lot going on and always quite interesting to try and keep up with it. With that as well, I can imagine, do you reckon that plays a part in actual leadership in what you're working on at the moment?
I find that the best leaders have a very wide repertoire and experience. And it
Mm,
really doesn't matter what function you're in. So if it's sales,
okay.
marketing, product, tech, that leaders have a very wide and vast experience. And the ones that I really admire the best are the ones that come from different industries, and
Yep.
they're not just one track, leaders, and they can really take all of the lessons, good and bad, and apply it. Also, leaders that I would say are more people oriented. And
Mm,
that's my personal preference. But I find that leaders that actually also care about the people that are working for them and with them is super important. And we can all tell the difference, when a leader gets up care and they care or they don't. Like, so yeah, it's something that I think makes a difference.
So that leading by example as well, isn't it, really? As well as just like, yeah, which I can imagine that is something that you definitely implement. But it's really interesting to obviously speak to you about actual leadership. I know there's a lot of women who are inspiring to either go into a leadership role or actually are in that type of position at the moment. It'll be interesting to hear if there are any kind of challenges that you maybe have faced through getting to your leadership position where you are today, and how you maybe built not even the resilience, but how you actually overcame any of them challenges.
Yeah. So I think first we have to start with some of the preconceptions, and this really applies. So for all the listeners out there, women that are trying to get into leadership or who are currently leaders that want to advance to the next level, there's some kind of myth out there that you can have it all, or
Mm,
you have to do everything all at once, and that's completely not true. I have seen women in leadership, and especially women in tech, that do have it all, but the caveat is not all at the same time.
okay. In
So
what
that
sense?
career and family and I don't know, vacations and traveling around the world and whatever it is that they want to do, their hobbies, it's this balance and this ebb and flow.
Mm,
And I think as women are taught that they have to be everything to everyone at once. And you have to have this level of perfection. So the
hmm.
perfect leader in the workplace, the perfect, partner and, mother, for example,
It's a lot.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen it all at once.
Mm,
So all the women leaders that are up and coming or existing that ask for advice, I always tell them, look at your life as kind of a
hmm.
movie, and this chapter in the movie, this is what you're focusing on, and they
Yeah.
can choose whatever they want, but focus on something and make it excellent. And then you
Hmm.
move into the next chapter, because if you try to do it all at once at the same time to this extraordinary level of perfection, it's nearly impossible. So I think that's really important for women in leadership.
That's actually really interesting. I've never looked at it like that. Actually taking one part at the time rather than trying to perfect it all in one go. No wonder it's hard to juggle if there's quite a few things to do. Okay, no, that's really interesting to hear. With like you can just hear the actual passion from yourself about that actual leadership, especially women in tech. Is there any one or is there anything in particular that inspired you or mentored your actual journey?
I kind of had to do it. I wish, when it's one of the reasons that I spend so much time and energy either mentoring other women or speaking about
Mm,
these topics, is because when I was going through it, I didn't have many, female role models, etc.
okay.
I came up through an age where, I mean, I was in finance at the beginning of
Hmm.
my career and it was very male dominated. And then when I moved into Amazon, that was 2012, I believe. So at that point, there wasn't many,
Yeah,
female
can
executive
imagine.
leaders.
Yeah.
So you kind of had to do this by, by trial and error, kind of walk through the fire. What I find now is I have a really great mentor back in the US, and she was ex Pepsi, IBM,
Oh,
and they were
wow.
in the days, yeah, even in her
Mm,
days, she was the only woman in the room. And then I try to have mentors who are men. I try to have mentors who are younger than me, older than me. So I try to get this really diverse set of people that I, draw experiences from and draw advice from, because I
mm,
really believe that that's important. So an example for that, I know a lot of executive leaders nowadays are talking about, okay, how do you hire in the Gen Z cohort? How do you relate
yeah.
to Gen Z?
Yeah.
Well, if I don't have
Uh,
anybody to speak to that's in the cohort, it's going to be very difficult to identify. So, this is, I think, the new twist on mentorship. Sometimes
mm,
people think that your mentor always has to be older than you. I think
okay.
it's a group of mentors. Some of them are
Yeah.
older and wiser, some of them are younger because you want to gut check, you know,
Yeah,
how you
definitely.
relate. And as a leader, I think it's really important because you're leading a huge, vast, usually teams of
Hmm.
individuals. And they're all different and different ages, and they come from different backgrounds.
Yeah. And I think it is really good to like especially what you mentioned about more younger mentors as well, because it is as well like fresh eyes and what they kind of bring to the ideas. I think is what people don't realize, that having an actual mix of not only like diversity in like women tech, but actual ages as well. I think it is really important, because more maybe like the younger like people coming in as leaderships, they might have a whole new way of actually contributing to what someone's been there for 10 years. So I think that's a really important factor, to have that real kind of mix, and actually be able to, yeah, just get a bit of a different perspective from different type of like age groups, but also people as well. Do you think there's anything in particular that you do in particular to kind of help build diverse and inclusion teams, or is it very much just being more about like being open-minded when you're helping build, yeah, like your teams in the companies that you work for?
What a question. And I think the question is
Mm,
so timely because, I mean, yourself and all the listeners who have seen all the recent statements, the
mm,
headlines in the United States, they were getting rid of the DEI initiatives. I think, what was it, Zuckerberg at Facebook, he's getting rid of all that. And so you see a lot of corporations kind of axing their DEI initiatives.
yeah,
How do you make a more diverse and inclusive team? You have to be the example and you have to be very open about it. And
yeah,
diversity comes in all forms. So it's not just
mm,
women or race. I mean, it's all kinds of different backgrounds, learning styles.
mm,
There's so many things. But I think the first thing is you have to want it
yeah,
and you have to be very open in your communication about going after it.
mm,
So I've even, had examples where we want to hire people onto the teams that are much older. Let's say you're in a startup, company, and the average age is anywhere from 25 to 35.
yeah,
To hire somebody that's 55 coming in,
yeah.
and everybody's looking at you like, what are you doing? This is actually a good thing to do. This is, true diversity. So I
Mm,
just want to make that point that it's women is super important. I'm 100%
yeah,
about the topic, but there are other facets to diversity as well, and I think that we need to remember that and embody it and be the example. So that's the way to do it.
yeah, definitely. And I think that's definitely something that people can really kind of implement in their teams when they are actually looking to expand. Like you said, not only just be open-minded about more actual women in tech coming in, but also there's a lot more into actual D&I around like different kind of like cultures, but ages as well. And I think it is just really about getting a good mix of people that can bring some solid ideas from all different aspects. I think that's a really kind of strong drive for actual companies to do that. So, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Um, I know in my network, especially, I work with a lot of actual engineers wanting to go into leadership, and I know this is always that kind of initial step into stone. Like, how did you actually get into being, because you are very senior in your position now, like is there any advice to taking that little bit of a leap of faith to actually go into a leadership position to even start with?
Yes. So I think this is an oldie but a goodie, is that a lot of people think, especially in the engineering realms, a lot of people think that the most technical engineer, the smartest engineer, is going to make a good leader. That is
Mm,
not necessarily true. And I think those of us who went to business school, we've done the case studies, we've all seen where you hire the best marketer, the best product person, the best engineer, and you promote that person to leadership. And a lot
yeah.
of times it fails
Mm,
because they don't have the same skill sets. And also, what I tell people in my teams is what made you the best in the room or the smartest in the room may or may not make you the best leader. These are two completely different types of skill sets.
yeah,
In a senior leadership role, yes, you need to know your function, of course, but
yeah.
it's to become more about how you can enable and foster teams, how you understand people, how you understand psychology, how you
Hmm.
understand how to blend the strategy of the company and making sure that you're forming the right teams. I find it quite interesting that there's so many books out there, whether it's in tech and scaling, how you scale from 10 to 100
Yeah.
million, and there's so many books, but they don't talk anymore about how you craft great teams.
Okay.
Back when I went to business school, they taught us about the psychology of people. And
Yeah.
you put different types of people together so that they made well-oiled, functioning, cohesive teams based off of trust and collaboration. And they don't do that anymore. They just
Mm.
kind of take this, what they think the smartest people are in a different function, they throw them together. And a lot of times, a lot of those teams actually fail because either there's too many egos, in the room,
Yeah.
or they just don't know how to collaborate together. So back to your question, if you're really good at your function, regardless of what it
Hmm.
is, move into leadership, look at the qualities that you need for leadership, which is, do you have empathy? Do you
Yep.
have consideration? Do you have a level of understanding? Can
Mm.
you put your ego aside?
That's a
Can you
big one.
exactly,
Yeah.
can you be vulnerable enough to get up in front of a room of people that you manage and say, I
Mm.
don't have the answer to this?
Hmm.
And so if you can't do those things, then you know what you need to work on.
Yeah. No, that's good to know. And I think that's very similar to like what we mentioned previously when trying to perfect everything at once, where actually it does always sound like just to take one step back, you do then take two steps forward. So to having that one step back, actually evaluating your skills and like what you said, like, can you do this? Can you do that? But if not, then just work on the one thing at a time, actually develop yourself. And that's especially as like engineers, you're at that point very strong in actual development and engineering. So then take that time to do a little bit more of like personal development so that you can then to take that step into leadership and actually be able to lead by example. I think that's a huge thing. I've always said that. I think leading by example just really sets the tone for the team, and it's really good kind of indicator that people will kind of respect you and listen to you just by doing that. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to hear, and I'm sure I'll be able to grab them after. If there are any books that you advise, we can always put them in the link as well.
There is one, and this is so anyone that has ever run across a podcast with me before, this is the one
Mm,
book I always talk about, and it's not a business book. Um, Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist,
mhm.
and it is a book about a guy that goes through a series of experiences in life and comes to self-discovery.
Okay.
And the reason I think this is one of the best leadership books is because what I always say about leadership is it's your inner self and your inner work.
Mm,
The more you work on yourself, the better leader you're going to become because you're going to be more aware, you're going to be more balanced. And when I
mhm.
say self confident, I don't mean ego. I mean, you have enough stability within yourself that you can handle other people challenging you, right?
Yeah.
On concepts. You can handle working with people of diverse mindsets and
Mm,
backgrounds that might have an opposite opinion that you do. But a
mm.
lot of the issues that I see of people, and back to your question, jumping from an individual contributor role or let's say a first managerial role
Yeah.
up into senior leadership roles, is really these types of concepts and ideas. And so you really need to do a lot of the inner work, and they don't teach that in business school, unfortunately.
No, they don't. It sounds like something you definitely have to kind of put aside to actually work on yourself. But it's just such a huge aspects of it though. So it's a shame that they don't teach it in business school because it's such a massive contributor to actually being a strong leader. And you're very much an example of that. You can tell with how we've spoken and even like your advice today that you've had a lot of work and on yourself and where you are today. I think it has definitely been great and interesting to see like your positions that you've gone into. It is very inspiring, that's for sure. um, would you say that there's any, like, I know it's kind of strings from what we just mentioned, like any kind of actual like strategies or mindsets that helped you actually get to where you are today? Because I know going back a bit to like women in tech, there's not as many women actually in leadership roles, so it can be a little bit daunting to be pushing. I know it's so much better than what it used to be 10 years ago, but there's still a bit of work to be done. Like, how do you kind of overcome that mindset?
It's really interesting. I grew up in the States where even though there are a lot of opportunities in the States,
Mm,
there's still also a lot of, divisiveness. There's a lot of polarization. All you have to do is look at the politics. And when you get into the business world and especially into tech, there's all kinds of preconceptions.
yeah.
So, I've had situations in my career where I was the hiring manager, but people mistook me for the secretary or the receptionist. Like I've had all kinds of
Okay.
things, happen. So if you let you can go out into the world, and if you let all of these things in the world try to get you down, you would never leave your house, right?
Yeah.
So I think for any woman who's trying to make it in tech or in leadership, keep going.
Mm,
Just keep going, never give up, keep going. You
yeah.
cannot control the opinions of other people.
Mhm.
Possible. The only thing you can do is control your actions,
Mhm.
your thoughts, and what you are going to do next.
Yeah.
So that is the single best advice. But a lot of women that I mentor, and I have to say men too, I don't think this is just, localized to
Of
women.
course.
Men and women both. They're so worried about what's happening, out in the world. And if I say this, who's gonna, react to it? And who cares? Is really the thing. And a lot of the tech leaders, I was gonna say that we idolize, but I don't idolize all of them. But if you look at like a Steve Jobs, like I know that he's up there, kind of in the tech hall of fame.
Mm,
But, people, I never worked for him. He was not in my same generation,
yeah.
but colleagues that I had that had actually worked for him always claimed what an asshole he was.
Yeah.
Always talked about. And so I don't know, like, we're idolizing him for his business, but was he actually a good leader? I think
Yeah.
that's a different question. If you look at the Jeff Bezos, those kind of guys in the world, they idolize Amazon as a business.
Mm,
Was he a good leader? I think that's so, let's make it
questionable.
a question.
Yeah.
So it's also identifying who you want to be, right?
Yeah.
As a leader. So, yeah, a lot to that.
Yeah. That's a whole nother topic, but I agree. I think it is very much sometimes you can kind of have that mindset, but actually changing it that you can overcome that mindset and you can become a tech lead or a team lead, engineering manager, even up to like director and CTO. Like anything it is possible once you put your mind to it. And I do like the fact that anyone that this obviously applies to is stop worrying about other people think. Just focus on you. As long as you focus on yourself and being a good person, then it will naturally come to you. And I think that's a really important factor, being about a leader and even about like more like C-suite positions, because they now have an impact on the actual business, like you mentioned. So yeah, I think it is really important. And I think one thing to mention is what we've been speaking about recently as well is just getting involved in a bit more communities as well. I think this is something that I definitely want to drive, and I know you do, especially in meetups. But how important is it, do you reckon, to women in tech or even people across D&I to actually get involved more in actual events and meetups?
I think it's really important. And
Mm,
for me, I have gotten to the stage in my career where I'm doing a lot of events and a lot of
mhm.
meetups. And sometimes people ask me why I do it. And, my answer is not only because I love it and I want to give back, but
Yeah.
a lot of the women coming up, especially, they want that example.
Yep.
And so, what better example than to see it? And I've had so many women come up to me and they're just like, wow, to actually see it. And it's not
Mm,
about being perfect. I share all the bad things that happened in my career, the failures as well,
mhm.
but just to have, somebody relatable that they can speak to show the example. And I think, to all the women listening, it's important to get out there to share your story because the
Yep.
more you do, the more people in the community understand that they're not alone, that
Yeah.
they're going through the same things. There was a great telly show. It's called Scandal, and it
Oh,
was
okay.
character Olivia Pope. It's in the United States. Kerry Washington was the actress, and she was this political mover and shaker, and she worked with the president. And at the end of the show there was this iconic scene where they had like a picture of her and a little
Mm,
girl like looking up, right? And it was kind of the same thing like with Michelle Obama as first lady. There's another iconic scene of a little girl looking up, right, at her picture. And the
yeah.
whole point is that it is possible. And so that's why I think it's really important to have a voice, to
Hmm.
be out there, because you can show others that it is possible. And
Yeah.
especially for women, the numbers are just, the numbers haven't moved much. And
Mm,
I just, Skillsoft was it? I just quoted a few months back a Women in Tech basic report where they did interviews, across different continents.
yeah.
And the numbers have not moved much as far as the number of women, in senior leadership or C-level roles in tech, women in certain, functions.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the sad thing is we're
Yeah.
still at a plateau.
And this is why it's great for people like yourself to come on board and actually speak. And exactly like what you just mentioned about the analogy of that the little girl looking up to someone. Well, you're that person, hopefully, that other people are listening to, looking up at you at the moment and hearing about your inspirational story. But then actually, it's like a domino effect because then that can maybe help other people listening to get out to these events. I highly, highly, highly recommend meetups. I always say to people to go and just network as much as you can because then exactly like you said, you then start to realize actually there's so many people like me in this community. Even if you're in Berlin or Munich or even North Rhine, like Dusseldorf, it's very much like you think that sometimes that you're the only person in that town when actually, like you said, you go to an event and there's 120 people there and you can relate to all of them. So I do think having a community is huge, and I think that this is why it's great that we do Women Rock to get people on and speak about their stories like yourself, to create this community. And even if it inspires one or two people, that then person can then inspire 5 people and then that person 10, and it just keep going because like you said, the statistics and the numbers are so like so slowly moving. We just need to keep pushing that. I need to keep pushing that D&I through different companies, and I think that's definitely something I've and yourself are very passionate about. So hopefully with people listening today that they've been able to be inspired through what you've been speaking about. I think it's been great. Have you got any last advice for the listeners at all?
Yeah, I would just say, whatever objective you have in your career, don't give up, go for it. There's no goal that's too big. So,
Mm,
one of the things that a lot of men do I see in their career is they will apply to that job, even if they know they don't have all the qualifications. So for women,
yeah.
apply, you know, go for the job that you think is too big for you, doesn't matter.
That's
Because
huge. No, so there was. I was sorry to interrupt, but there was something I found that if women look at a job spec and they don't have one of the requirements, they won't apply to it.
yeah,
Whereas if someone else has two, they can got two of them, and they were missing out five, they'll apply. So I'm sorry, I just needed to interrupt to say I vouch for that and just apply, even if, yeah.
always go for it, take the risk. I
Mm,
remember when I first left the United States and I moved to Australia at the time, like all my friends and family, they're like, what are you doing? How are you going to do it? Da, da, da. And then after, I made something there. And then afterwards, they're calling me and they're like, oh, how did you do it? And so take the risk, go
yeah.
for it, is what I always say. Try to take all of the fears, the worries out of the situation. And nobody's career, I only think I know one guy that I would call like the golden carpet guy, where, that one person whose career is just so rock solid and never has an issue. But everyone else, your career looks like a ball of spaghetti. Like it's really all over the place. And, when you think about working 20, 30 plus years, you're going to have so many different experiences. So go for it, take the chance,
Hmm.
ask for the promotion, ask for the raise, go for the job, move to the different country,
Yeah.
do all of those things.
Yeah. Be ruthless. and then see what happens. It's so worth it. Oh, it's been so lovely speaking with you. I really appreciate you jumping on. I know this is definitely going to inspire a lot of people, not only in my network, but also a community across Women Rock as well. So thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it.